Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, everyone. Rabbi Jenny Greenspan, Congregation Beth-El. We'll see if we have any joining us shortly. We'll gather we'll take a moment to gather as we pull up our Torah portion. We are very much nearing the end of our Torah reading for the year this week with Parashat Nitzavim, the almost one of the last Torah portions we will read on Shabbat in the 57. This is the last one we will read in 5781, almost the last one for this particular Torah reading cycle. So we'll dive into it in just a moment. But first we'll say Shabbat Shalom and welcome to the Seagulls and to the Sclares. Shabbat Shalom to Carol Steinfeld. Shabbat Shalom to everybody who's joining. Alan Hamburger. So good to see everybody gathering each morning, every week. Shabbat Shalom to Jim Hammond, to Phyllis Luger. So good to see everybody. And Shabbat Shalom even to those who are not commenting but watching anyway. Shabbat Shalom and welcome to everyone. As I mentioned, we are in Parashat Nitzavim, named as such for that opening phrase where we are. Nitzavim means to stand, and we are to be imagining the Israelites standing at the foot of the mountain and at the edge of the river Jordan, about to cross over, where Moses will begin kind of his closing remarks of his final speech to the Israelites. He's really getting going in his conclusion here. If you would like to follow along with me from an Etz Chaim Chumash and you don't have a physical copy with you at home, as always, you can go to our website, go to bez613.org. Under worship, you'll select the Shabbat links and scroll down and select the Etz Chaim button from the resources, and you'll get a PDF of this week's Torah portion. Do our best to have it there each week, so you can follow along with me from there. If you have another Chumash that is not in Etz Chaim, you can grab it as well, and I'll make sure to tell the chapter and verses information so that you can follow along from yours as well. I'll say Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Larry Spector as well. I'm so glad to see so many joining us this morning. I mentioned this is kind of in Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Jody Zucker. So good to see you every week too. So this portion, Nitzavim, is the standing at the edge of the river, ready to get there. The Israelites have been journeying for 40 years, wandering the wilderness, following the clouds and the fire of God's presence, sometimes a pillar of clouds, sometimes a pillar of fire, depending on if it's day or night, to follow God's presence as they've wandered the wilderness for 40 years. We think we're going through a long journey with COVID. We've got nothing on our ancestors. And I'll speak more about that on Rosh Hashanah. But here we see them reaching the end of that journey. And Moses, their leader, knows that he is not going to be crossing the river with them. He knows that he will not be going into the land with them. And he wants to give his last statements. It's almost his final sermon as he's about to let them cross the river without him. It's mostly made up of this week and next week's Torah portion. Both of them sometimes they're even read together in the same weeks, depending on the timing of the calendar. These are his final words before he'll do kind of a closing song, and then God will take care of Moses' body as he passes in 2 portions time in the very conclusion that we'll read on Simchat Torah in just a couple of weeks. But here we have Moses calling out to the people, begging them to keep track of one another and begging them to keep track of the Torah. If we read on the surface level, we see lots of choosing to do the right thing, follow God's commandments, and you'll get blessing. If you don't, you'll get exiled. You won't be able to stay in the land. You'll get curses. And I think that the core value that Moses wants to impart to the people and continues to want to impart to the people, meaning us as well, are that we have to care for one another and that we have to look at this Torah for ourselves, each of us anew, because this belongs to all of us. And I see that in 2 particular pieces of this Torah portion. So I'd like you to join me. If you are following along in an Etz Chaim Chumash, we're going to start on page 1166. with Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 14, and then we will go forward to another section in the following chapter. Join me in Etz Chaim. You can join me on page 1166, Deuteronomy 29:14, in any other Chumash. כי עת אשר ישנו פה עמנו עומד היום לפני אדוני אלוהינו, ועת אשר איננו פה עמנו היום. God makes this covenant not only with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us on this day, so meaning the actual historical Israelites who were standing there that day before Adonai, our God, and with those who are not here with us today. So that phrase, those who are not here with us today, is wide open for commentary. Commentators have looked into this to say who is meant by that. So it's this covenant made by God with the people, with those who were there that day and those who are not here with us this day, meaning that historical date on which the covenant was first established, or rather formally established with the entire people, rather than simply with Abraham and his descendants, but now with the entire people. And the rabbis go in many different directions with this. Some interpret means the physical people who were alive at that time but were not physically capable of standing there with the group. Perhaps they had some physical or mental malady that meant that they needed to stay behind in their shelters and weren't actually standing on the riverbank hearing this final sermon, but they too were included in the people. Another interpretation of those who are not here with us this day is the future generations. That the covenant is being made not just with those who were standing there on that day, but every person following, just to say us, all of us, because the third interpretation to share from the Talmud is those who are not with us here this day meant not only the people who were a part of the people at the time and their future generations, but with those who choose to join this people. Meaning all future generations and all converts, all Jewish souls included on this day. So when God makes this covenant with the people who are standing here and those who are not here with us this day, we are reminded that this Torah belongs to every single Jew of every denomination, of every entry point into Judaism, whether born or chosen, that this Torah belongs to all of us, every single one of us who was there to make the covenant and who has descended and chosen to become a part of that covenant. It belongs to all of us. But what do we do with it? How do we know what it says to us? We determine it. So move forward with me in the Etz Chaim Chumash to page 1171. If you're following in a different one, we're going to go to chapter 30, verses 12 through 14, 1171 in the Etz Chaim Chumash. Moving forward myself as well. It is not in the heavens, we're talking about the Torah here, this covenant that we are making. It is not in the heavens that you should say, who among us can go up to the heavens and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it? No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to observe it. Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od, bepicha uvilvavecha la'asoto. The Torah itself is telling us that the Torah is not meant to be inaccessible. It is not meant to be up in some higher spiritual plane that most of us would not be able to reach. It is not across a river or the sea so that we would have to go on a long, long journey to access it, to understand it, to interpret it. But rather, ki karov elecha hadavar. It is very, very close to you. This matter, this word, this Torah is right here. Each of us has it, and looking at that, who's included in that covenant, every one of us has it. It is available to all of us to interpret, to understand, and to work into our lives, to continue to revisit year after year, to figure out what guidance it still has for us in our own life. The concluding verses of this Torah portion remind us to choose life. As we go back and we reread the Torah over and over, our primary goal is to have it be accessible to all of us and understandable to all of us so that we can each figure out what it means to choose life, to care for one another, to increase life, to treat life with dignity and with sanctity, and to choose to care for every life here on this earth, every life that is being lived and needs protection from one another and for one another. So here in this Torah portion, we are told again that we are all a part of this, and the Torah belongs to all of us. It is very close to us, and it is our guide to how we can choose life, celebrate life, and treat our lives as precious. So we enter into Rosh Hashanah, say Shabbat Shalom, and leave us here, and we will go into the week of Rosh Hashanah. I will see you on our live stream on Monday evening, on Tuesday, and Wednesday morning. We'll figure out how we can move forward into a new year, how we can hold on to one another, know that every single one of us is part of this community, and that this tradition is right here at all of our fingertips, so that we can help one another, support one another, and offer love and sanctity. So Shabbat Shalom. I'll say also to those who've joined since I did my first round of Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to you as well, to Marty Lip, and to Michael Kahn, to James Roth, and to Jefferson Lopez Oliveira. And Shabbat Shalom all the way from Brazil. Shabbat Shalom. So glad that everyone is here, and I hope that we can all remember we are all a part of this community. This Torah is for all of us, however we have found ourselves a part of the community. And the gift of life that we have is precious, and we should care for one another and help care for the lives that we are all living. So Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova. I look forward to seeing you on the live stream for our Rosh Hashanah services in just a couple of days. Shabbat Shalom.